Hi, everyone. How are you doing? It's so good to see you all on this beautiful day. I feel like it's so interesting to be at Sundance because you're always cold and then you're like so sweaty at the same time. I'm Arij Mikati. I'm the Vice President of Programs at Pillars Fund. Our team designs, organizes, and plans best-in-class programming tailored to the needs of storytellers working to advance narrative power in Muslim communities. And we curate, select, and fund storytellers to achieve that goal. We execute events that give leaders a space of spiritual refuge as they grow their skills. And today, I'm really incredibly honored to be in conversation with some phenomenal storytelling leaders for a panel we're calling Filmmaking Against the Odds. And I have a little bit to say about that title, but before I do that, I want to invite our incredible panelists up to join me. So please give a warm welcome, first of all, to President and Executive Producer at Cloud Woman Media, and one of Time's 12 leaders shaping the next generation of artists, Bird Runningwater, a legend. Triple threat, writer, director, actor, and the first Palestinian woman to be nominated for an Emmy, Cherien Dabis. Singular and self-made writer and director by way of interior design. I need to talk to him about that. Rohan Kanawade. And an award-winning documentarian. I would be remiss not to mention that I'm also very proud. She's one of our beloved 10 Pillars Artist Fellows this year, the great Amber Faddis. So the panel description that we were given says, getting a movie made is no small feat. Getting it seen is an even bigger challenge. Identity, background, circumstance, and other factors can compound the odds against a filmmaker. How do these filmmakers get their films made and seen despite the odds? It's a really good question. So here we are. We are a group of Arab, Desi, Indigenous, Palestinian, queer, immigrant, Muslim people in the year 2025, ready to discuss what it's like to make a film against the odds. And it feels like kind of trite, right? Because yeah, it's really hard to make a film with or against the odds. It's just a hard thing to do. But everything that you all do, everything you do, a film or not, you do triumphantly against the odds, especially today. Your entire joyful existence and your refusal to be invisible and your insistence on preserving and proliferating stories that simply tell the truth is a triumph. So I just wanted to start out by saying that, because I think given the relentless events of the last, 2 centuries, the genocide that paved this country's existence and the one that we continue to bankroll into 2025, to the fires burning in my home city of Los Angeles because of a refusal to learn to love the land, to the idea that someone would ever again try the fool's errand of telling another person who they're allowed to love or what they're allowed to be called. It can be really easy to approach this conversation, I think, from a place of scarcity and impossibility. But I am really in awe of these people and really inspired by them, and that is the way I want to enter this conversation. Because all I see when I look at the 4 of you is possibility. And I don't know about y'all, but I could really use a reminder of what's possible right now. So I just want to first just start off by giving a hand to all these people because they are what's possible. And now I want you to talk. So each of you put films into the world that were really odds-defying. And some of these people might not know a lot about your films. And so if you were asked to ask me, I'm pretty partial to the idea that if a story isn't a little odds-defying, is it even worth telling? So can you each share a little bit with the audience about the films you brought to the festival this year so they have context about what's coming to their screens? And what about your triumphant films felt odds-defying for you as you set sail on the journey of making them and getting them seen? It's open to anyone.
Okay, I'll go first.
So brave.
Ladies first.
First of all, that was beautiful, Arij. That was a really, thank you. That was moving. You're a beautiful speaker. So I made a film called All That's Left of You, which is multi-generational Palestinian epic about love and loss over decades in one Palestinian family, and is really about what it takes to overcome, really the incredible will that it takes to overcome intergenerational trauma and to lead with your humanity despite the incredible odds against you. It's a film that's really sprawling in that it covers more than 75 years of Palestinian history and is a story that's not really been told. So that felt kind of massive to take on to begin with. And so I think taking that movie out, getting it financed, what was really amazing actually is that I expected it to be a lot harder at the beginning, let's say. But I kind of quickly found my collaborators and my producers, and we got a really incredible response from public funds in Europe, which was amazing. So we put the movie together through like European public funds in the Middle East, and some private equity and donations. And then we went to Palestine to prep the film. And I should have known that it came together a little too easily, and that I was, that it was not going to continue to be easy. But basically what happened with us is that we prepped the entire movie in Palestine. We were prepared to shoot all over the country. And then when we were 2 weeks away from shooting the film, my foreign crew had just arrived. We had amassed a massive warehouse of carefully curated period props and set dressing. We had begun construction on our locations. We had already chosen every location for the film. We had taken the crew all over the country to walk through the shooting plans at every single location. And very shortly after that, just a short 2 weeks away from shooting, we were forced to evacuate. For obvious reasons, this was late, 2023, and we all know what happened. From that moment, the movie, basically, like, it was just every moment after that was like a Herculean effort to just keep going, to keep the movie going. I suppose it's the risk you take when you go into occupied territory to make a film, and so after that, we ended up just trying to scramble to figure out where we're shooting, how we're going to make it work, how we're going to raise more money, because we lost all of that money prepping the film, and we weren't able to shoot it there. And then we had to, basically look for Palestine everywhere but Palestine. We had to rebuild Palestine in places like Greece and Cyprus. We had to get all of those beautiful props out of Palestine. We had to get our cast and crew out at a time when embassies were closing, and we were literally meeting with ambassadors, begging them to help us and get visas for my crew. It was really probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. I found myself not just directing a film that I was also acting in, but also kind of like leading a corporation that was like quickly sinking and going under if I didn't hurry up and find more financing. And I think what's the takeaway from all of it is that we found community. Like, my crew and I became family, and we had each other's backs, and we went to the community, and the community really came forward to support the film. Amazing people came forth to support us and to make sure that we were able to keep going. And I think that's kind of what I take away, is that, like, when you're really up against something as challenging as that, to really, like, I'm lucky in that I had that community with my crew and my cast, and then the larger community of Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims and people around the world who deeply cared about what was happening and wanted to see this movie get made right now at this time during one of the darkest periods in our history. So I think that's what that's what I take away, is just that faith in community to keep going.
Well, you sparked a thought of mine when you said occupied territories. Well, my film's a Native American film, free Leonard Peltier documentary, premieres on Monday. But, we had an interesting journey on this film, first just in the fundraising of documentaries during kind of a horrible time in the industry of really trying to get any kind of financing or even soft money, to retell the story of, the longest serving Native American political prisoner in the federal penitentiary system. And so, we really trudged through. By the time we got to Sundance, we still had like $1 million gap that we were still trying to close. Even the Sundance News didn't even help us, so much. So it's been really dire out there on that. But I have to say that, telling this story, and when I finally saw the first rough cut from our co-directors, Jesse Shortbull and David France, I could not sleep. I was so moved. I was enraged. I was moved. I cried. It was like I felt, such great pride, because it's such an authentic, really the original telling of Leonard Peltier's story from his childhood through to his politicization on to, through the American Indian movement to his targeting by the FBI. And, and you get nervous every now and then because, you're having team calls and you're hearing clicks on the phone line. I'm like, oh my God, they're coming for us again. And then I guess the big twist is, as many of you may know, like last Monday in his final 15 minutes of his presidency, Biden issued a clemency for him. And, so we were thrilled. We were monitoring. We had a film crew outside the prison because we knew he was on the list. Intel coming from the White House was touch and go. He was on, he was off. It wasn't, what's going to happen? And so, but I have to say, like, when I think about the climate of, indigenous storytelling, formerly I ran the Sundance Indigenous Program for 20 years. And that was an uphill climb, and it still is, because what we live with in our own homelands is erasure and invisibility, and an intentional erasure. Native American history is not taught in standard state school curriculum. It's only taught in elementary schools up until 1900. And not even getting into high school, junior high school. So, and then if you look at, how our percentage of representation on film and TV, it's like 0.04%. So we have generations of Americans, thanks to colonization, living through, with the idea that we don't exist anymore. We're a thing of the past. So and that's in the American school system. So when you're trying to deal with executives, American executives, they've been educated in that system. And so they just can't even grasp the notion of what a Native American is, or what we don't know. It's always like, we don't know what to do with this story. There's not enough Native Americans of an audience, for a profit to be made, or to be a return on investment and things. And so, I really am grateful for Robert Redford, because he was such a passionate supporter of indigenous film, and so much so that he, mandated a thread of work in Sundance Institute that still goes today. And I feel like without that leverage and without that advocacy in his name and that institutional support, there's no other American arts organization in our country that even, from its founding has acknowledged indigenous people in our own homelands. So I think, for us to have this premiere at Sundance, it's really great. It's like a homecoming of sorts. We're also kind of weirdly celebrating, Leonard Peltier's release, after 50 years in prison, and he's so frail, and he doesn't get released until the 15th, and we're just, really hoping and praying that all goes well in the meantime. And so I think it's on a very tragic day, like Inauguration Day last week, it gave the indigenous community in the States something to celebrate, for once in our history. And so I just feel really proud to be able to premiere that film on Monday and let people see Leonard's story.
Okay. Hi. So the title of my film is Sabar Bonda. In English, it's called Cactus Pears. So it's a story of a romance between two men, which happens during 10-day grieving period in rural India. So the idea came to me actually when I was mourning my father in 2016 in my ancestral village. And before that, for 10 years, I had avoided going to my village because, when I was about to finish my schooling, all our relatives had already started talking about my marriage. I was not out to anyone that time, and I just didn't want to get into those conversations, so it was best to avoid everything. But when my dad passed away, my mom thought that we should go to the village because most of our relatives stay there. So at least they could meet us, and they can be there for the 10th day ritual. And I had no escape, and I had to go. And the thing that I knew was my dad was no more, so I had become the head of the family. I was 30, so everyone is going to talk about my marriage there. And that's what happened. We have in India, we have so many relatives, big families, and most of them I had never met, so everyone was actually stranger for me, and they were just talking about marriage. And all the time I kept thinking how I'm gonna escape this situation. And so the thought came to my mind that what if I had a friend over here who knew about my sexuality? I would have just sneaked out for a while and stayed away from this pressure. And that thought stayed with me, and that's when I thought that it's an interesting story. Actually, I can use it and change my claustrophobic experience of grieving, and make it a tender journey for the character. And that's when I started exploring this idea. Some of the other things also that actually shocked me during that time, which I thought should be part of this, was while we were preparing for the funeral, all of a sudden my relatives started saying that, oh, he's not married, so he cannot cremate his father. And I was like, oh, okay. And suddenly I realized that marriage is so important, it has so much importance in Indian culture. And I was like, I am doing this because I was the one who took care of my father and did everything for him, and I'm going to do it. Finally, I did it. But for the 10 day when I was there, I could not really answer the question of marriage because I didn't want to lie, and then I didn't want to come out because my mother is really connected with all our relatives. And I didn't want to spoil that relation because if I come out, I didn't know how the relatives will respond and how they'll treat my mother. So I had to just keep quiet and endure all the pressure and just go back. So I did all that. But in the film, I tried to make it a little warm and tender journey for the central character. So even though there is death in the film, my whole goal was to make a film which is tender. So that's how this film happened. And so premiere is on this Sunday at Egyptian, 5:45 p.m. And this is the first ever Marathi language film to be selected at Sundance. Now, give you a little context to that also. So the first film that was made in India was made by this man who was from same community, who spoke the same language. And since then, no film from that language came to Sundance. And we make so many films each year in India. And India has so many different languages. It has very diverse culture. So this is the first time Marathi film is premiering at Sundance. So I'm like really, really happy about that. Thank you.
My film is called Coexistence My Ass. And it is a film about Noam Schuster Ilyasi, who grew up as the poster child for peace in Israel-Palestine. Noam grew up in a village where Jewish Israelis and Palestinian citizens of Israel lived together by choice and grow up learning Arabic, learning about their neighbors. And so she, thought she was going to bring peace to the Middle East, went into the UN and realized that's not how you affect change in this world, and she turned to comedy. I made a film about 10 years ago. I lived in Ramallah, Palestine for about 7 years, and I made a film called Speed Sisters about a group of Palestinian women race car drivers. While I was in Palestine, I met Noam. So I've known Noam for 10, 15 years. And in about 2019, she came to the U.S. and was developing her one-woman comedy show called Coexistence My Ass. And we met up in Brooklyn, and I was just like, is anyone filming this? Because this is wild. Like the film itself, or her one-woman show is really about poking fun at sort of the peace industry in Israel and Palestine and how it doesn't address the underlying issues that are preventing peace, which is, the occupation and the inequality. So I was just like, oh, this is brilliant. I'm going to come to Boston. I have no idea whether you're funny. I'm assuming you're funny. You seem funny. I've never seen her perform. And off I went. And, we didn't know what the film was going to be about. COVID happened. She had to go back. And so then I'm trying to film, make a film in a country that I can't get to, in a language that I don't know. And what ended up happening is I met up with Rachel Leah Jones, who's an amazing Israeli-American filmmaker based in Tel Aviv, and her partner, Belish, who took on this project and became my eyes and ears, and we were able to make it. And what I don't think we realized was that we were documenting the last 5 years that has led up to the point that we are at today in the increased occupation and oppression of Palestinians, Israeli society moving to the right, politicians moving to the right. And Noam has been this voice, this ongoing voice of dissent within Israeli society, which is something that really interests me. And so, Cherien, and I've known Cherien for many years. She's actually a mentor. I'm really amazing that I'm on this panel with her. I'm very honored. But it's really hard for us to bring these films out into the world right now. It's there's a lot of censorship. There's a lot, of things that we can and cannot say, or feel we can or cannot say. And so I think that Sundance programming both of these films this year is really amazing. And I think that audiences want to see, we've, for most of the people, anyone here that knows about documentary, there's a film out right now called No Other Land that is such a beautiful film, and about the Hebron Hills, a community in the Hebron Hills in Palestine. And that film has won every award and has not had distribution in the United States yet.
It was just nominated for an
Academy Award and still does not have distribution in the United States. So
I just heard an hour ago that it now does.
Okay.
Let's go. That's amazing.
I'll tell you after.
All right. Well, then forget it.
No,
Scratch what I just said.
No. But it's a great point to make, because look at what it had to go through. This film was at Berlin last year. It won an award in Berlin, and went on to win so many more other awards. It was shortlisted for an Academy Award. Now it's been nominated for Academy Award. And I'm just hearing through the grapevine. Of course, it's not been confirmed, so I've not seen it released. I've not seen it in the trades, which is why I don't want to misspeak. But I just heard an hour ago at a party here in Sundance that it now has distribution. So, and I don't want to say who it is, just in case, maybe they're negotiating. I'm a little superstitious. Let's hope it goes through. So, but it's really remarkable that and this is a film that's co-directed by an Israeli and a Palestinian. So, that's a dream team, for so many. And it's really just astounding to me. And yet not. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than it's surprising and it's not surprising, and it's tremendously sad that that's the climate that we're living in. Maybe the fact that there's a ceasefire now will shift things, but we're in a very risk-averse industry. But the good news is, as Amber was saying, is that audiences really want this content. Audiences want these stories. Audiences want these stories. They are hungry for these stories. And especially given what we've seen in the last 15 months, people are more interested than ever before in the untold Palestinian stories. So we have to find a way to get them out, even if it's not in a mainstream way.
That's absolutely right. I think that's such a perfect segue into my next question, which is that so often for us that are filmmaking against the odds, we have to be so good we're impossible to deny, right? Like we have to have the Oscar nomination before we can get a distribution deal. That's insane. And so often the industry can be our enemy and not our ally, and we often feel like we need them in order to actually get our art seen. And whether, like you said, it's the industry's risk aversion to fresh voices, that they're like, oh, well, we don't have a comp for that. Where's the audience for that? Who's going to see that? Or whether it's a more blatant form of censorship stemming from, political pressure or cowardice, battling the industry while also wooing it is a really difficult tightrope to walk. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you've walked that tightrope, or any advice you would have for people that are considering walking that tightrope, or if you've just chosen to not walk the tightrope entirely and pursue other options? I'm just curious about that.
I have to say, when I was working at Sundance, I think I ultimately, between shorts, docs, features, I think I got about 30 films made. And it was always through the leverage of Sundance. It was always micro budget. I mean, we're talking micro, making a feature for $50,000, And then, of course, you bring it to Sundance, never a bid. These films, very similar, to this film you're talking about, winning awards around the world, and no distribution deal. Finally doing crowdfunding to do a self-distribution deal, get things out there. And then at the end, I don't even know where if there's prints of any of these films. They don't live in any archive. It's almost as if they don't exist, And so, I don't know, I'm burning the rope at both ends at this point. The last film I had here was Fancy Dance with Lily Gladstone. And we went over a year. We had one $50,000 bid on that film, But thankfully, as Lily's star rose with Killers of the Flower Moon and her personal advocacy, when she got the IndieWire Award in New York, she referenced saying, this past year I starred in the best film that I've ever been a part of, and it's not the one you're thinking of. And she dedicated that speech to our film, Fancy Dance, and thankfully, Apple eventually stepped in. And did buy the film, and it got a healthy, theatrical release, and now lives on the platform. But it's a really challenging moment because there are all of these check boxes that you have to hit in terms of bankable stars and and all of these. And also I think there's a general sense of laziness with distributors. Sorry guys if you're out there. They just don't want to create new models. They don't want to create new models for distribution and marketing and trying to find new ways to tap into underserved audiences who really hunger for our stories.
It's so painful to hear, and I have a story to share. Just remembered based on what you were saying. Emrika was here at Sundance in 2009. Emrika's my first film, and it's a pretty crowd-pleasing drama comedy, I would say, and it was, had broad appeal. And I think that was my way of introducing myself as a Palestinian-American filmmaker to the world. Here I am, we're not so bad. But it was really inspired by my family's story as well. So it was very authentic. It was very much inspired by what my family went through and the racism they experienced during the first Gulf War. So it had that depth, but it also had the comedy. And I was shocked by the lack of offers. We got 3 offers from distributors who were brand new. And none of the mainstream distributors really came to my world premiere. I did end up finding out that my DVD, back then they were DVDs, that my DVD screener had been leaked and that distributors had gotten a hold of it. And so they had watched the film in their conference rooms rather than watching it with an audience here. And it premiered so well. It was at the Eccles, a theater of 1,200 people, as many of you know, and people were laughing and crying, and it was just such a beautiful, warm reception. And I remember my sales agent at the time going to a couple of the mainstream distributors and going, "Where were you?" And I think they found out okay, we'd seen the movie before, and so and where are you in? Why are you not interested? This, no one shall be named, though I'm super tempted. But one particular distributor was like, well, we saw the movie, and my sales agent was like, well, this is exactly the kind of movie you release. So why are you not putting down an offer? And they're like, we're going to wait to see if it goes to Cannes. And it's exactly no other land. And so literally a few days later, we found out that the Cannes, the directors for it at Cannes, watched the movie and wanted it. So my sales agent went back to this distributor and said they got into Cannes. And he said, we're going to wait to see if they win an award at Cannes. And literally, Cannes is months away. So, and by the time, we're in a fickle industry where you quickly become old news. So if you're not picked up relatively quickly, there's just a million new movies that are going to be released, and suddenly your movie's old. And by the time we got to Cannes, it was like, well, we're going to be an old film. And I was a new filmmaker going like, really? Like, that's how fickle this, like, what? And it was a little bit shocking. And so we had to kind of go to the distributor, the offers that we got. We ended up going with National Geographic, who was brand new in the fiction film game, and they did a wonderful job. I had a great experience with them. They're no longer releasing fiction films, but it was their first fiction film release. So, it was a bit of a risk for us to take. It was a bit of a risk for them to take on us, and I think it ended up working beautifully. Like, the film had a healthy theatrical release in the U.S. and of course got distribution in other territories. And the sad thing is, we went to Cannes and we won a prize. We won the press prize, actually. So this distributor, and they were likely just stringing us along, and that's certainly what I felt. But the fact that this is okay for, this happens with people of color, especially when you're making movies about people of color that do not have named stars, this is what we have, this is what we're up against constantly.
If I can mention, going back to Fancy Dance, I think one of the highlights and things that I was really proud of in terms of just our multicultural community, when it came to financing the film, it was actually Asian American financiers and Black financiers who stepped up to finance this Native American film. And in the end, with the Apple purchase price, they actually made significant profit. And so I think that was one of the new data points. If you look at the purchase prices of Native American films, that's kind of like at the top. And I think another positive, outcome, Sydney Freeland, who's a Navajo trans director that I've worked with to make her first feature, Drunktown's Finest, she just did Resball, which is on Netflix, our first studio film as a community for, I don't know, I think it's maybe somewhere around 30 million, I've heard, I'm not sure. But I think for another new data point, for that to be hit, for a first native studio film to be made, I think there's still strides happening, and I think that they're still kind of testing the audience still, I feel like. And so I really advocate for us to, support one another's films, make sure that we all go to see these films of all these other different communities, because I think we have so many great shared experiences.
And talk about them. Help us create the buzz that we need, and go see them in theaters.
I had an experience recently because I make documentaries, and I'm a cinematographer, so often I don't make many. Like, this is my second documentary in 10 years because it's too hard to do it more than that, to do an independent documentary.
Can you tell them how long it took to make this film?
5 years. 2019, 5 years it took me to make Speed Sisters as well. I needed a 5-year break in between, but it's really hard with independent documentaries, especially around issues of Palestine, of Muslims. I feel like Arabs are pitted with South Asians. There's only so many films of that genre that people would make. But I did have an experience last year where I was asked to direct a branded content piece for WhatsApp, and the piece was about a group of Afghan women soccer players, young teenagers, who had to escape from Afghanistan in 2021 when the Taliban came. And they asked me, I had to pitch, but I ended up winning the pitch, and they had me come in and direct this film. And what was really interesting is that it's a company called Modern Arts that were executive producing it, and they really allowed me, and WhatsApp really allowed me to tell the story that I felt that we needed to tell about this community. They had product placement and stuff that they needed because it still is, it's a branded content piece. But they really allowed me to lead the creative. And that film ended up winning, I think it was like 4 or 5 Cannes Awards. It's won every sort of advertising award that you can imagine. And it was like, what I took from that is that people want to see these authentic stories, right? Like it's the audiences, and it resonates with them. And so I always question, like, why is it so hard for us to make these films? Like, why is it so hard to get these films out when it's obvious that there's an audience for it? But
when I started writing this film in 2020, it was just that I was feeling nice when I was writing. And so I said, you know what, I'm just keep writing. Because before that, when I was exploring feature film writing, while writing, I had so many thoughts, and I will make it, and this and that, and so many things, but never happened. So when I was writing this, I was like, I don't know if I'll get to make this film, but I just want to write it because it's making me feel nice, and I'm like trying to reimagine that whole period of my life. So I was just happy. So I just wrote it. And almost for 2-3 months, I didn't show it to anyone. And then I shared it with my producer, Neeraj Churi. And he liked it. And he said, we should do this. And I was like, okay, but I know that it's going to be a really, really hard journey to make this film happen, because first it was, at its heart, it's a queer romance drama. And in India, not many people really explore queer stories. On top of that, it was a Marathi film, because nowadays many studios or producers don't want to do Marathi films. Then I was specific with its treatment, that I don't want any background music in the film. I don't want any camera movements in the film. It's just a static shot, and even though it's a romance drama, it will only have the sound design where we'll use only nature sound. Because in a way, I was trying to create a portrait of that time of my life. So the way I experienced it, I just wanted to create it that way. And so we knew this is going to happen, and exactly that's what happened. But the other thing, that we started submitting it to the labs, because I wanted a visibility for this film, and it's my first feature. So, and I'm not a trained filmmaker. So I thought, if we get selected at any labs, I'll get some insights and discuss, I can discuss this with some professional writers. So we started doing that, and thankfully we got selected at really good platforms. So, but there they were always saying, when you're going to pitch the film, please have known actors on board. You share the names of those actors. And I was like, I don't want to use any known actors. No, but that's when you'll secure the finance. I said, but I don't want to do it that way. I wanted faces which are new. In a way, when you see some new faces on the screen, you just start feeling like maybe these are real people. And that's what I wanted in this film. So I was sure that I want new faces. But the other thing was, when we were pitching the film or reading the script in Mumbai with the producers, with the different producers, to see if they want to come on board and get any finance. So they started saying the same thing, like, oh, there's no background music. You don't make films without background music. There needs to be camera movement. There needs to be this, and you need songs in the film. You're making an Indian film. And I was like, no, I am not doing any of this. So, of course, no one was coming on board. And finally, we just had to reach out to our queer friends from around the world. And in the end, actually, queer community came together with the finances, and that's when we shot the film. And during the post-production, 2 producers from Mumbai, they came on board because they have a post-production facilities. So they helped us bridge that gap, and that's how we could finish the film. And then another actor from Bollywood, he saw the film and he liked it, and that's when he came on board as a co-producer. And now many other actors who saw the film, they are actually supporting the film. They are writing about the film on Instagram. When the Sundance news came out, they all shared it. But it was a really hard journey, but then we knew we wanted to do it this way. And it was really hard to preserve the vision for this film, because I think most of the time that's the difficult part, because everyone gives you some feedback, oh, you should do it this way, that when you're a first-time filmmaker, then that happens a lot. Even that was happening even when we were doing the post-production. The people were advising, oh, you should not do it this way, you should edit in this way. My editor is here, he knows the kind of days we have spent listening to people reacting to our cuts, but we knew we wanted to do it this way. So that, just staying true to the vision, was a difficult part. But now many people now have seen the film, some industry folks and some just regular people. We just wanted to show it to them and see how they react. And actually many people who only watch commercial popular cinema, even they liked it, and now they are saying, we hope that this film gets released. So yeah, as we are saying the same thing, that audience wants to watch these films, which are different than the regular films. And now, because of the streaming platforms and the other things, they are available for people, and they are watching them. So I think if those films get a theatrical release, people will go to the theater and watch it, because now in India, All We Imagine Is Light and Sundance's last year Indian film Girls Will Be Girls, they got released and people went to watch it. So hopefully for us, journey will be a little easier to get to the theaters after the premiere and when we are close to the release.
Inshallah, for sure.
Thank you.
So time is flying, and I have like a bazillion more questions, but we only have time for one more. So I have chosen my favorite one. Because I get to decide. So in 2 or 3 minutes each, I would love for you to share with our audience, what do you hope for people to feel, experience, understand, or do when and after watching your films?
For me, it's clear, I just want them to feel that warmth that we tried to create through this film. So, and the love and the simplicity. And I was actually saying this during my pitches, even though there is death in the film, I don't want to make a sad film. Rather, I want audience to just sit into that seat and relax. And I just hope that sound design helps them relax and makes them feel nice and warm, because India has, when we shot the film, I wanted to use the heat of the day. So there's that heat. So I just hope that when audience goes into the theater, they just feel warm and cozy. Yeah.
That's such an interesting question, because when I was a decision maker at Sundance, I used to ask that of directors and writers. I would say, what do you want someone to feel, from watching your film? And my challenge to Indigenous filmmakers was always, because we're so misrepresented in the history of cinema. It's only been since 1998 since we've actually been making our own fiction films. But I feel like there's a level of humanity in Indigenous storytelling that I think can be really inspirational to everybody. And my ultimate goal is for the broadest audiences possible to see themselves in an Indigenous story. And I think that really requires a lot of excavation down to a very humane level, in order for connection to happen, which is really difficult given the complexities of each of our histories, It's just to really get into those really human spaces. But I guess as far as Free Leonard Peltier, I was constantly amazed by the generosity and the peace of Leonard himself, because the FBI and the federal government kept telling him, we'll let you go, just admit that you did it. And he chose not to. He's like, I didn't. That's not my truth. And I can't live, a non-truth, even just to be free. And I think that level of sacrifice in the name of, a peoples and, a history that the world still doesn't necessarily know about, I think is so admirable, you know, and I hope that our audiences will respect that and understand that.
That's so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. That's really beautiful. I have goosebumps. You know, in many ways, my film tells the Palestinian origin story, the story that people don't really know because it's been kind of left out of the mainstream, erased, denied. And I hope that people can take away a better understanding of the origins of Palestinian suffering, because recognition of suffering is how we begin to heal. And really what I want people to feel after the film is, I want to break their hearts wide open. I want people to feel compassion. I want people to feel that they want to do something, and I want to inspire or maybe re-inspire hope and faith in our collective humanity. So that's really what I hope to do with this film, to show people a side of the story that they've not seen and really inspire compassion and hope in humanity, not in politicians.
You know, one of the things that Noam does, and just speaking off of what Cherien just says, is that she acknowledges that she sees Palestinians for their struggle. She sees Palestinians in the history, and it's one of the things that does. I think that it really sets her apart from a lot of other people, and that is it's so important that we don't lose sight of that. And I think for Coexistence My Ass is, you know, I want people to see that there is another way forward, right? The polarization that exists, and I'm not saying like come together and then some sort of kumbaya. There's an absolute recognition of what is underlying what is stopping peace from happening in that region, and Noam is able to see that and to speak to that, and I think for people to think about their own selves and how far. I mean, we're entering in a really scary time right now, and how much are we willing to give up? How much are we willing to speak out for liberation, equality of. And against oppression of others.
I don't know about y'all, but I feel incredibly grateful and lucky to have been able to hear from all four of you today, and really honored to be in conversation with you. And I wish we had another 3 hours to do more of it. But for now, we're out of time. And so all we can do is give you a huge round of applause for sharing so eloquently with us.